Greetings everybody, it's me again. Welcome back to another video here on the channel. And in today's video, I wanted to do something a little bit different. Like I did with the last video, I wanted to do something different and tell a little story. 3 stories to be exactly, and those stories involve my time in school. Now, I had a lot of fun in school, though I miss it in some ways, I don't miss it in other ways. If that makes any sense. I feel like a lot of people feel the exact same way about school. But during the first year of middle school, I really didn't experience nothing much eventful aside from being bullied, which I will discuss in detail in another video. But the school I went to afterwards was a private Christian school that I don't think is even in business anymore. It was called the Monarch School. And to be honest with you, it was a really fun time. Sure, there were bad parts about the school, but there were also way more positives than negatives. So I wanted to discuss this, and I wanted to just get 3 interesting stories that I had from my time in that school that I think are very funny and very interesting. It's going to start out from the top, and then it's going to get progressively more and more crazier as we get to the third and final story. Story number 1 is of a teacher. Now, there was a couple different teachers I had during my time there when I graduated in 2017, but one teacher that was very polarizing and controversial to some of the students was Miss Lee. Now, Miss Lee was a teacher, and she teached the high school students and occasionally the middle school students, because how the school worked was it was both middle and high school in a large little room close to each other, and we cycled through occasionally. It was actually a lot better than you think it is, but it was kind of chaotic. But, and I say chaotic without any quotations at all, it was chaotic. But Miss Lee was very controversial as because she gained a reputation for being a little bit more strict than the other 2 teachers. There were 3 main teachers that we had. Mr. Henry, I forgot who the other one was. I'm so sorry if I forgot her name. But she was the tamest teacher, Mr. Henry was the middle of the ground, and then Miss Lee was the strictest out of the 3. And her strictness and abrasiveness rubbed a lot of kids the wrong way. And there are 3 notable things that I noticed with Miss Lee that kind of irritated me back then, and still kind of irritates me, but nowhere near as much as it did when I was younger. The first thing is that she was very reluctant on explaining the work to people. You know how you have there's some teachers that they're supposed to teach you the work and not leave you in the dark and not get upset when you ask them for help. Miss Lee was kind of like that. If she would barely explain the work and then expect you to understand everything. But that's kind of not how kids work. You kind of have to explain it, especially if more of the kids in this school had disabilities like I do. Now, this was very, very interesting because it made a lot of people angry because she was barely answering any questions about the work, getting defensive when people were asking for her to explain it more. She would just get defensive and irritated at us, which only made kids, me included, even more annoyed. Then, and I had a patience, and I know me and patience don't mix, but back then I was kind of slow to anger when it came to a teacher. I was annoyed under my breath, but I never visibly showed annoyance. Until one time, me and two other students were being shown work. She barely explained it, and when I got annoyed and said, well, can you do a better job at explaining this? She got defensive and abrasive and wouldn't explain it properly. And that made me audibly angry because I got really angry at her when I probably shouldn't have done that. So I apologize to her if she ever sees this. I doubt she would. But the next thing that rubbed people the wrong way about Miss Lee was the fact that she literally recorded. Now, I didn't know this was illegal until it actually happened. Like, she actually got in trouble for this. Like, during lunchtime, we were all very, very loud. I'm talking, like, really metal concert type of loud in a small, compact room. And, yeah, we were basically just really loud and rambunctious. One table in specific were middle schoolers, and when they wouldn't listen to her, she took her phone and placed it there to record them and watch them as they were doing it to make sure that they would behave, which, again, you're not allowed to do, and she got in trouble for that and got disciplined for it, which I was dumbfounded at, the fact that she actually managed to do that, and I'm shocked. I'm actually shocked that you wouldn't get fined for something like that. That's what I was expecting. Because she recorded minors without their consent and expected not to get punished. It was wild that day when that happened. It was crazy. And the third thing is she seemed kind of like annoyed and apathetic when a student threw up. She got sick and threw up on the floor. And she seemed kind of apathetic and annoyed at the fact that she threw up. If that makes any sense. Like, usually a teacher wouldn't do that, but Miss Lee, God bless her soul, she did that, and at the time you wouldn't think much of it, but combine that with everything else, it really truly just made it an entire mess that you just didn't know what to think. It truly was wild. But apart from when it comes to like school stories, it was the tamest out of the three we're going to be talking about. I have plenty other school stories that I could talk about. Who knows, I might do a part 2 to this one day. But still, it was kind of annoying. And she did gain a very polarizing reputation with students in the school because of how she was acting. And it really, truly was just kind of irritating. It wasn't like make or break, but it still was really annoying. It's not like the worst thing that's happened in the school, that we'll get into, but it was still just a mess, in my honest opinion. I wish nothing but good things for Miss Lee. I don't hate her. I was just annoyed. I was a kid. I didn't know any better. We all do things and say things we don't mean when we're younger, when we're not fully developed in our brain. Story number 2 it involves 3 kids, actually. 3 kids in my school. It involves a Jeremy, a Maddie, and a Joshua. Now, this took place, the escalation reached a boiling point of volcanic proportions during lunchtime. Go figure. And this was during time, because during my time at Monarch, there was 3 different locations. This was during the second location? No. I think it was the third location. But the third... No, wait. No, it was the second location. I'm kind of confused. But this was during the second location where it was a big circular room. And there was a staircase. Now, I personally didn't know. I was just walking around, having lunch. And after I finished lunch, I walked around the room until lunch was over with. That's usually what I did. I stuck to myself, was quiet, and just was a passerby and pretty much a bystander to everything that was happening. But apparently afterwards, if I found out from everyone talking that Jeremy had apparently made Joshua very angry because him and Joshua and Maddie were friends, and Jeremy had done something. I don't fully know what he did. Did he insult her? Did she, like, do something bad to her? Like, I don't know fully what he did. But Joshua took things into his own hands instead of going to the teacher or to, like, somebody who could help and diffuse the situation. Joshua, and I kind of have to respect him for being a good friend. It is a good friend thing to do, but in the concept of being in a school, I think it's kind of dangerous to do that, especially because I didn't want to see someone get expelled or possibly arrested. Because yes, what he ended up doing was kind of physical. What ended up happening was Jeremy was standing in the middle of this big circular room, and Joshua was talking to Maddie, who was crying on a staircase. Joshua was being a good friend and comforting her. I walked by, not even knowing what they were talking about. I probably didn't even care because it wasn't my business. And all I know, I just, out of nowhere, I look to my left and I see Joshua walking towards Jeremy, who was standing in the middle. He was walking with a passion. He grabs Jeremy, and when I tell you, he straight up grabs him. I went too far away. He grabbed him and kneed him in the stomach as hard as he possibly could. And I'm telling you, he straight up kneed him. Like, I don't know, like he took his knee and just boom, jammed it into his stomach. And he fell to the ground holding his stomach and the weirdest thing, the craziest thing about this is after he did this, he just walked away. He just walked away from it after all. He didn't continue fighting him. He didn't continue beating him up. He just turned and walked away. That is kind of crazy. So when I saw that, I'm thinking, I can't visibly show you what my face looks like when I saw that, because, like, I didn't really make a exasperated, shocked face when I saw it. I just looked at it, was confused and dumbfounded, but oh my lord. Deep down inside, I'm like thinking, that's not supposed to happen. Like, this isn't supposed to be what's going on. Because usually people would argue and yell at each other, but never, like, physically fight each other. That only ever happened one other time, to my knowledge. And to see that happen it just blew my mind. I didn't know what was going on. Now, to be honest with you, I was just shocked when I saw that. I was genuinely shocked. Now that I'm older, I could fully process what I saw, and I was like, no way did that just happen. And even now, talking about it to this day in 2024, this happened even before I graduated. This happened like a couple years before that. And I was shocked when I saw that. I was genuinely dumbfounded. But that was just the craziest part of it. I wasn't expecting it to get to that point. Like, that was dumbfounding. I really didn't even understand what was going on. Now, those were the first two stories that I talked about. Those were the first two stories. But now we're talking about the final story that we're going to be talking about is probably the craziest. It was probably the craziest story out of them all. I saved the craziest story out of the three for last. This story involves two people, with one sticking up and getting mad at the person who did this. And when I tell you it was physical, but it was way worse than the other two stories. By a large margin. This was near the end of my time in school. Near in 2017, I believe. And it involves three people. David, Michael, and Dalton. Now, for context, David was like an 18-year-old senior. Dalton was like a high schooler, but I don't know how old he was. But Michael was a child. He was basically like beginning of middle school, like probably third year of middle school, second year of middle school probably. And David was sitting in a chair on a computer doing his work, because that's how he did some work, for at least for him at least. And Michael was known by a lot of people as a troublemaker. He was kind of an annoyance. He was very troublesome, and it was very difficult to try to work with, and very difficult. He was a menace. He just liked misbehaving, and he liked annoying people, basically. And just like going against what you should. He was a kid. He was a middle schooler. He's younger, far younger than David was. And I understand getting angry at him, possibly yelling at him. But what he did was very, very crossed a line in many different ways. And Dalton agreed with it. David was being bugged by Michael, I think during lunchtime. Or I think during work. I don't know what time it was exactly. But David was being bugged by Michael. Michael kept bugging David, and I think David was telling him to stop and just leave him alone. And Michael wouldn't listen, because that's what he did. He didn't listen to anybody. He was a menace. He liked acting out and being, like, mischievous. But one thing led to another, and David just snapped. He literally snapped. He got up from his chair, picked up a shoe, I think it was his shoe, and he started hitting Michael in the head with it. He hit a middle schooler, like a second-year middle schooler, possibly third-year middle schooler, in the head with a shoe, like a disobedient child with a belt. Now, I want you to paint a picture. David is not his father. He's not his dad or his mother. Like, and even then, it'd still be messed up. But David, he still grabbed a shoe and was hitting this kid. An 18-year-old senior was hitting a second, third-year middle schooler in the head with a shoe because he was messing around with him. And upon seeing this, everyone literally was like turned against David and was angry at him for doing this. Everyone hated him for what he did. Dalton, bless his soul, got up and he also snapped. He was verbally ripping him a new one, getting mad, like enraged at what he did. And they started having a yelling match. David and Dalton probably got escorted to the office. I think both of them did. People checked on Michael, and it was just crazy. It was like, and when I'm talking about yelling, a shouting match, they were yelling very loudly. Everyone in the building could have heard them, and it was a small building, but even then, everyone was probably hearing these two yell at the top of their lungs for what was happening. And I was like, I feel like I should have opened my mouth. I just stood there like a bystander, not saying anything. But when I should have just yelled at him also, because you just beat a second to third year middle schooler for no reason. If he's messing around with you, just call the teacher or the principal. Don't take matters into your own hands and beat him up with a shoe. That's not how an 18-year-old senior should act in a private Christian school. That's not how that you should act. You shouldn't beat up a child because they're irritating you. That's not, child abuse is not how you should handle things. And and David and Dalton, they had a lot of other issues. They did not like each other. They were constantly getting mad at each other and having yelling fits at each other. And it was kind of crazy seeing it all go down. I didn't even know what was going on. It's just bizarre to even think about it. But it really was. Sorry if I triggered anybody with that third story, but if you watch my content, you probably aren't that kind of person, but still. If you made it this far, bless your soul. Thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for having an attention span that can handle me and my rambling and my childhood stories. Thank you all for watching these this story. I can't talk. All this time making content, I still can't talk. But thank you all for watching this video. I hope to see you all in the next video, whatever it might be. I might do a part 2 to this, because I do have a couple more stories I could share about my time in school. But until the next time, I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye, and God bless.